Hey y'all, I'm Heather and welcome to my channel, The Debt Free Quilter. You know what time it is now. It's time for borders. Ready? Let's go. Same story, different day. Lay out the borders. Because what else are you supposed to do, right? This part is something I can do with the minions still awake. Now I have everything in order. Time to add some black squares. Now to be fair, does everything stay in order? No. No, it doesn't. And it is not worth my sanity to make them. All right, let's add this border to the quilt. It was at this moment that I realized something may not be right. And we'll get to that a little later in this episode. Until then, press the borders and add a third border. I'm adding this third border in the way I add usually most of my borders when they're plain. I just finger press a little bit and go on about my merry way. Uh-oh, there was an oops there. Good thing I caught it. And once again, I'm pressing to the background fabric. And now I'm prepping and making more of those tiny 9 patches. Because why wouldn't we want to add more to the border? Am I right? And in every conceivable color. To be quite honest, this process took me about an hour and a half. Thank goodness for movie magic, right?
Tiny 9 patches, check. Strip units, check. Background pieces, triple check. Now it's time to start making the last borders that are going to go on this quilt. As with every other part of this project, we need to lay it out before we start sewing anything because those triangles get tricky. They are different sizes and they do have to go in specific locations. Now, I only have so much room on my table here, so I'm only laying out a little bit of this at a time. You will get to see the entire border laid out, but for now, this is where we're at. Honestly, the way this border comes together, it is really, really cool. It's a pain in the rear, but I think it's going to be worth it in the end. I start by adding the triangles to their respective pieces before I attach the entire segment to the centerpiece. I also make sure I'm pressing everything where all these seams, or at least the vast majority of them, are going to nest very nicely as I sew the segments together to form the border strip. And once I get done with these segments, I will lay out more units to make more segments, and then I will sew them all together into one long strip at the end. And now I'm going to go ahead and build out this side of the border strip and just get it completed and set to the side, and then I will make some more segments. And as you can see, I trim off the dog ears as I sew, so they're out of the way and they're not blocking anything. Sometimes it is a little tricky to work those seams in and make sure that nothing's going to flip. And now I'm adding this next piece. I'm making sure everything is lined up correctly before I start sewing. As y'all can see, that pink little seam guide right there makes this process a whole lot easier. Because this quilt is using an almost extreme scant 1/4 inch, I just leave it there and let the chips fall where they may. All right, let's speed up this process, lay out more units, and get to sewing. All right, now it's time to finish building out the rest of this border strip, so let's get to that. All right, let's speed this up. Now we're going to make a few longer bits or units of this strip and sew everything together in several segments and then add all those segments together. Putting all the bigger units together at the end can be a little more challenging as you're working with a lot more bulk, but at the same time, it's really satisfying to see it all come together. It's also harder to control when you put it up to actually sew it and make it go under your needle. So you just have to be aware of that and go slowly. All right, now I know y'all are thinking, wait, why is she putting these border strips on the quilt? We haven't seen the other border strips made yet. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because the numbers for this quilt are off, I needed to put the top and bottom borders on before I made the side borders so I could get the length right. It was just easier to do it a little bit more oddly than to do it right and have things not match up like they should. Alright, because these side border units are so finicky and because they go together in such a way that I cannot add pieces in the middle to lengthen them, I went ahead and did one more off camera because I did the first one I did off camera to get my head around it. And now I'm putting together the last border unit and I'm going to attach the two that I'm showing you to the quilt. Another thing I'm going to be honest with you about, there were a couple nights this week I really should not have been allowed by my sewing machine. I was that tired and I made a lot of mistakes. But you know what? It's done now. And with that being said, let's add these last two borders and call it a quilt. But here's the crux. They still weren't long enough, even with measuring and making the sides last. I still had to add a piece to the bottom of each of the borders to make them fit. Yay! It's done and you will get to see it here in just a couple of minutes. But first, my microphone is not working. I don't know why. I will figure that out or I will leave a very bad review, one of the two. So, for now, I will turn up the volume during editing for this portion, so hopefully everybody can hear me. Let's talk about this quilt. This quilt was frustrating in a way it shouldn't have been. It was frustrating because some of the numbers were wrong. And there's a lot to go with that. But before we get there, you know what? No, let's go ahead and go there.
Okay. Overall, the pattern for this says it will be 86 by 102 for a queen size quilt. I got 86 by 104. And it's not because I did anything wrong. There were segments in the second border that I had two segments that were, or two border strips of that were one segment too long. I had one border strip that was two segments too long, and then I had a border strip that was 1.5 inches short. Make it make sense. The borders themselves, the outer borders, had to be adjusted. I had to do them differently to make it work, and I still had to add length. If the quilt itself had come out to 102 long, I would not be saying this right now. Oh, here's the big one. The frickin' charts. If you have this pattern or this kit and you have not cut into it yet, just stop. Hard stop. Take the charts, add up for each color, make your own chart, and do the math, get the measurements, and know how many strips you have to cut in each size, in each width, without having to do any cutting for leftovers, because it will still be wrong. You will still have to cut more if you don't. If you have this pattern and you haven't cut into it yet, please email me. Okay, please, because I would love to help you. It's you've got to get the full number, because if you don't, you will be just as frustrated as I was and having to cut more and cut more and cut more. And I don't want to see you do that. I would much rather you cut all the strips that you need in all the colors before you start the entire project. Even if you are just working with one strip at a time, know how many you have to have before you start. Please, if you have this kit or this pattern and you're planning to do it with 30 colors, please do the math. You will be so frustrated and angry if you don't, because I was that way. I trusted the pattern and the pattern was wrong, because all of the cutting instructions were not there at the beginning. And that's wrong. It should not be that way. It should not be this frustrating to make a quilt pattern. And it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or experienced or you've been quilting for 40 years. A quilt pattern should not be this difficult or this frustrating. That's the negatives. Now let's look at the positives. If you were to get this kit, you'd spend about $250. That includes shipping. It's worth it. The fabric. Oh, I love the fabric. The fabric is beautiful. The fabric is wonderful. And the end result looks like you're at a fireworks show. Like I said, you'll get to see it here in just a minute. I do absolutely love the finished product, even knowing I had to change things, knowing I had to reevaluate. It's 100% beautiful. And I love that. So, honestly, sit, do the math, and genuinely, I could see doing this pattern again in a year or two in a different colorway with fewer colors, but I will have to sit down and completely rework the pattern because there were mistakes.
and whether I made them or the pattern writer made them. Because I admit, I made a few, but not to the extent that it should change the overall size by as much as it did. So, love the finished product. Not happy with the pattern. Could have been a better experience. I'm going to say on a scale of 1 to 5, I give it a 3.5 because I love how it turned out. I love the fabric. I just wish the pattern had been a little more clear. Anyhow, let's go have a look at the quilt, shall we?